السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وللأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليكم مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعل الله آخر العهد مني بزيارتكم والسلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وأصحاب الحسين. الله سبحانه وتعالى قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في محكم الكتاب الحكيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قد أفلح المؤمنون الذين هم في صلاتهم خاشعون الذين هم للغو معرضون الذين هم للزكاة فاعلون الذين هم لفروجهم حافظون إلا على أزواجهم أو ملكت أيمانهم. صدق الله العلي العظيم. So the verses that I just recited from Surah Al-Mu'minun, they're also in Surah Al-Ma'arij, same exact verses. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here is describing the believer. And He's saying the believer is somebody who is successful. And what are the characteristics of the mu'min? That they are somebody who has khushu in their prayer, they have sincerity and concentration in their prayer, they take care of their prayer, their salat. They are also people who stay away from time wasting. And also individuals who keep up with paying their charity, the zakat. And lastly, those individuals who guard their private parts. The furujihim hafidun, except for with their spouses. So I want to talk a little bit about that, and that's the topic of my lecture, is the issue of lust and how it relates to the events of Karbala. So we see here Allah saying that the mu'min is a person who guards their privates, meaning that the lust of the individual, the desire, human sexuality. So that can be when it goes into the realm of sin. Or actually, I'm sorry, not in the realm of sin, but in all forms, if you want to take a look at lust or desire, you can break it up into three parts, basically. Three approaches to what should be done with the human desire. The first approach is the secular one, which is allow the person to do whatever they like. So the person is capable of engaging in any activity that they wish. That's one way to look at it. And this is how some societies look at it. And we see the problem with that. We see that what it leads to and what types of ills it creates in the society. This is apparent for everybody. Anybody who wants to think and to look at things clearly. The other way, of course, is to limit it and completely stop it. So that's what, for example, the Catholic Church does, or some Buddhist monasteries. Catholics are not the only monks, for example, who are celibate. There are a group of Buddhist monks who stay celibate. In fact, they go to the extreme of even castrating themselves. So this is how they deal with it. Well, Islam, of course, is a moderate religion, and Islam tells you there's a moderate path. So it says that it has limits, but it doesn't take it away completely, nor does it allow you to go and do whatever it is that you like. But we see that this desire is a very strong desire, and it leads societies, and it can destroy societies. And it is interesting, when we take a look at, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the Quran. I was reading Tafsir al-Mizan, actually. And Allama al-Tabari, rahmatullah alayh, he said that in the issue of forbidding these types of sins, so forbidding the lustful acts, the fawahish. Fawahish is an Arabic word meaning those acts of debauchery. So he said that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started limiting these things in the Quran, or talking against them, it wasn't gradual. That right away, when Islam came, it said enough, no more. Stop right now. قُلْ إِنَّمَا حَرَمَ رَبِّي الْفَوَاحِشِ. So Allah is saying in the Quran, or He says, say, my Lord has forbidden fawahish. He has forbidden it. Zahir or batin, what is apparent or what is hidden. So here Allama al-Tabari says something interesting, is that, for example, we take a look at the prohibition of alcohol in Islam, it came gradually. That some of these verses which forbid the alcohol came as Madani verses. And we see, for example, first Allah talks about, okay, don't come to the prayer drunk. Then later says, okay, don't get drunk at all. Because it gradually wanted to stop the pre-Islamic Muslims from drinking. But when it comes to the lustful sins, the fawahish, we notice something different, is that Allah forbid it right from the beginning. When it came down, there was no gradual change. It was enough. You have to stop now. Because these were very serious problems. The effect it has on the society and the effect it has on individuals is very detrimental. What type of things were happening, for example, in pre-Islamic Arabia? Not that, debauchery doesn't exist anywhere, but just to give you an idea of what specifically was going on at that time. There's a hadith from Aisha. And she's talking about the different types of relationships people used to enter into before Islam. And different types of nikah. The word nikah means to enter into a relationship, physical intercourse. So it said the first type was normal marriage between man and woman, which we know about. There's a man will go to the family of a woman and ask for her hand, and he was married. The second type, which was the next three types, which are the ones that Islam came and forbid, that were existing at that time. The second one after that she mentions is that there was a type of marriage where a man would take his own wife. Sallallahu Muhammad wa alihi. So a man would take his own wife and, for example, have her have someone else come and father his child. Why? They said, okay, because he would say, there's a man with good traits, or he comes from a good tribe, I want my children to be from him. So it's something that they used to do. Obviously, there's a million problems with that, but this is the type of debauchery that existed. They say, oh, this man, he comes from a very strong tribe, or he has these good physical characteristics, let him father my child. The other third type was where there would be some women who would sleep with multiple men, many. They call it nikah ijtima. This is what happened in the nations. So when that would take place, they wouldn't know who the father is. So how the woman would determine the father is either she would choose herself, she would say, okay, I want the father of this child to be this person, or she would say, for example, she would bring a person who was expert on genealogy, and he would look at the child and look at the different men and say, okay, probably it was this man was the father. Or they would draw lots, draw straws, like names out of a hat, and whoever is the winner gets to be the father of the child. This type of jahiliyyah that the people were living. But we see that they were living in all other types of jahiliyyah. That, for example, the issues with slavery, the alcohol, and all these other things. But Islam, for many of these aspects, it was gradual. So it didn't forbid it right away. But we see with this one, right away, the Quran is very clear. It says, enough, no more. Because it tells you the seriousness of this type of action, the seriousness of this type of effect, what it can do to the person, the detriment that it can have. And there are different types of this type of sin. Only one aspect of it is man with woman. And, I'm not going to talk about, for example, issues of homosexuality, that's for a different lecture, but that's another type of this type of sin of fawahish. Or a person self-pleasuring themselves, that's another type of this type of sin. All these fall into the same category. And all of them have these very serious detrimental effects. Sheikh Sudur, he has a book called Iqab al-Amal, Thawab al-Amal. So, this is a book which tells you the benefits or the punishments for different actions. In the issue of just zina, the fornication, and not the other types of debauchery, not the other ones that I mentioned. Just in zina alone, he mentioned 28 different narrations about the punishment for this type of action. 28 different ones. Some of them paired up with drinking alcohol. About 17 of them paired up with drinking alcohol. 11 of them, specifically, only the fornication itself. So what about some of these narrations? Imam Baqir, at least. He said there are 6 effects of the zina. 3 of them in this life, 3 of them in the akhirah. The 3 in this life is that it darkens somebody's face. So what does that mean? It means that it takes away the light of a person. The nur of their face, but also more importantly, the nur of their soul. It drives them into darkness. It said the second effect, it takes them deeper into the filth, into the debauchery, and it leaves them destitute, poor, without any money. And the third effect is that it can bring sudden death. So we have narrations that, for example, the angels protect you. They protect you from sudden death. There's narrations about that. There's some certain types of sins will take that protection away from people. Engaging in the indecent acts, the fawahish, takes that away. And it causes somebody to die suddenly without them even being ready for it. In the akhirah, what type of sins does it? What type of punishment? It says it brings about the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ghadab Allah on the person. It makes their hisab very difficult. It makes, for example, when they go in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they have to stand for their deeds, it makes it very difficult for them. And it was already difficult. Quran mentions that 1 day with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is like 1,000 of our years. Another place says 50,000 of our years. So imagine how long, and that's just a way for you to understand. It doesn't mean it's actually like our years. When we say year or we say days, we're talking about rotations around the sun. There's no sun on the Day of Judgment. Quran mentions the sun is gone, destroyed. So it's an idea for you to understand how long this period is. So it says doing this type of sin will even increase that period for you even more. And then this is all for the people who didn't repent, of course. And then after that, after all this, they'll fall into the Jahannam, the hellfire. Another narration says, in the barzakh, also in the grave, this is from Imam Baqir Islam. He said doing this type of sin will open 300 doors of punishment in the grave. It leads to corruption in society. We have a hadith that says these types of indecency are on the rise, it increases murders. This is how the world is built in a way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has built the way that certain actions bring about different types of reaction. Some of them we understand on the physical level, some of them are on a different level that we don't understand. But we have Ahl Bayt alayhim Islam to tell us about that. So they have mentioned that in the increase of these type of things, one of the side effects is that it will increase murders in the society. We see that this type of thing, there are so many different narrations. I'm not going to go over all of them. I'll give one more actually, just one more. About the effect of this, how severe it is. It says on the Day of Judgment, the people who have committed this type of sin, they will have such a putrid smell coming from them that it will reek to all the people who are there on the Day of Judgment. That they will ask Allah, what is that smell? When it is revealed to them, they will say, oh Allah, just throw this person into the fire already and get them away from us. This is the level which somebody reaches when they commit these type of sins and they don't repent to Allah. And we see how many problems this type of not controlling lust has caused. Look at the prophetic stories. Look what happened to Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam, when the governor's wife tried to seduce him. Look how many problems it caused for him. The she-camel of Nabi Salih. There was a woman from the tribe of Ad, and she seduced a man to kill that she-camel. He desired the woman, she told him, okay, you kill the she-camel, we're good. I mean, there's so many. What happened to Amir al-Mu'mineen Islam with Ibn Muljim? What type of depravity does it leave? I'll give you two examples of two religions that became very corrupted because of this. The first is some aspects of Judaism. Nabi Yahya alayhi salam. Yahya ibn Zakaria. Why was Nabi Yahya killed? And for what reason? What happened? The king at the time wanted to sleep with his niece. He wanted to sleep with his niece. Nabi Yahya said, no, you can't do this. You're going far into the sin. She seduced the king and he killed her for that. She told him, okay, I want you to kill Yahya. Because she wanted to become the king's wife. Till today, after they killed the prophet, the story is long. I'm not going to go into the story of the Shahad of Nabi Yahya. But after that, the king, he had his scholars write into Jewish law that a man may marry his niece. Till today, and I saw this myself, till today there are groups of Judaism that still practice this. Until today. You can go online yourself and you can Google search, just the same way as how, for example, we have scholars that answer our questions, they have istifa, they have the same thing. You go ahead and search for it and you will see that they're asking the scholars, okay, so my uncle married my sister or whatever it is, and we're having some issues, and they allow that. It's allowed in certain aspects of it. So still today. Some groups of Zoroastrians in the old time used to do the same thing. The mother and the sister and other close family relatives. There's a hadith of Amir al-Mu'mineen Islam about that. They asked them about what happened. What is it that happened to the religion of Zoroaster? He mentions that one time one of their kings, he became drunk and he lusted after his own daughter. And after sleeping with her, after fornicating with her, the people of his court came in and they saw what happened. So he didn't know what to do, so he started making something up. He said, oh, I saw in a dream that our God told me that, this is the best type of worship because of, such and such things. He started making things up. And this was the result of it. All this from people not being able to control their own desire. And they started writing this into religion. They said, this is what people should practice. They should do this. It's very good. Zurara, one of the companions of Imam Sadiq and the companion of Imam Baqir al-Islam, he narrates that Imam Sadiq al-Islam said that two things are better than all the acts of worship and prayers and fasting and whatever dua you can make. He said that is controlling what you do with your lust and controlling what you put into your stomach. Put the two together. So he said this is better than all that. And we have another hadith to comply with that from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and where he said that Jahannam, most of the people will go to Jahannam because of what they do with their private parts and what they do with their stomach. This is the biggest reason why people go and fall into hellfire. So controlling lust is a very serious issue. Especially now in the society that we live in, where everything is open, there has to be some type of control. Especially maybe for the older people now, alhamdulillah, you're older, it's not an issue anymore for the young people. And every moment, this type of horrible thing is leaching behind them. And Allah, He knows, the thing is about this specific type of sin, is that Allah says something about it that He doesn't say about any other one. Allah says in the Quran, وَلَا تَقْرُبُوا الزَّنَا. He says, don't even go near it. It doesn't say just don't do it. He says, don't even go near it. Don't even go close to it. So we have the narrations. For example, we look at the tafsir of these verses, the ta'weer from Ahl Bayt of Islam. They said, so what does this verse mean? It means what aspect of it is don't even look to those places where the lust is going to build in you. Don't even go near the zina at all. Because the effect is disastrous. It's absolutely disastrous. That brings us to the next point, which is Islam says some things about what effects these types of sin have. And sometimes some people have some difficulty digesting that. So, for example, we know that in Islam, if a person is born out of this type of illicit relationship, they are born out of adultery or fornication, but they are, what is the zina, for example, or haram zadah. So, for example, they cannot lead a prayer. So some people have some difficulty digesting that. So why is that the case? Is it that the individual is being punished? Is it that the person is taking on the sins of the parents? Or is there some other aspect to understand it? Looking at it from a complete perspective, first. Everyone, if I were to tell you, for example, and we have these narrations, and almost everyone accepts it. And when the Prophet says, okay, you find a good spouse, your children will be good. If you perform XYZ action, during marriage, your children will have this type of blessing. If somebody is waladul halal, the money is coming from halal, everything is halal, then there are good aspects to that person. So everyone accepts that. So how is it not possible for it to be the opposite? If it's one way, it has to be the other way also. If you're accepting of one, you have to be accepting of the other, because you're saying, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's like a balancing act. If we only accept one of them, then we're saying, oh, Allah's favoring these people for something they didn't do. The other aspect of it is that we don't fully understand what birth is. We don't fully understand what it means, that, for example, whose soul goes into whose body. We don't understand these types of things. And maybe that, we have, for example, some narrations that there exists, before this world, there exists another world. And we have a narration, for example, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says that the amount of times that somebody goes to Hajj is in essence predetermined for them, because Allah, for example, in the other world talked to the souls and He told them who's going to hear my call. And the amount of times that they said labbaik, they said this is how many times they'll go to Hajj in that world. So they said there's some aspect of predestination. It doesn't mean that, for example, somebody goes to Hajj multiple times always better than somebody doesn't go. No, it's just how things played out. Because, for example, the Prophet, according to some of the scholars, he only made one actual Hajj. So there are some things which are determined for you because of different reasons. We don't hear, for example, people saying, oh, it's unfair that I was so short. Am I being punished? Or I was born into this family, not to that family. There is a level of predetermination that happens. This is reality. No one can deny that. I can't, for example, choose which country I'm born in. I can't choose which family I'm born in. I can't choose my height. I can't choose my skin color. I can't choose a lot of things about myself. And there's some aspects. So it's perhaps it is that those people are put into that situation because of some negative thing that happened in that autumn time, in that world prior. There's so many different ways to look at it. Or maybe that, for example, that Allah will balance it out for them on the Day of Judgment. Yes, maybe they're born with a hindrance. That, for example, when they're born from this type of relation, there's a hindrance on them. But it doesn't mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to balance that out for them. And maybe that Allah will only hold them accountable to a certain extent. We don't know. We really honestly don't know. I mean, when somebody, for example, a mother, let's say she consumes alcohol while she's pregnant and damages her child, the child comes out damaged. And you don't hear people saying that, for example, oh, Allah is punishing the child. This is something the mother did. The mother did that. So we see that also in relation, for example, to leading the prayers and these types of things, there's a social aspect of it. There's a social aspect. That Islam wants people to understand that these sins are so wrong, they're so bad, that they don't want anyone to go near it, and to understand that there has to be a social stigma attached to it too. And also, having people to be in a position of leadership, whether it's leading the prayer or being a jurist, a judge, a muraja, which also have the condition of them having to be born halal, it's to save that person and to save that society. If you see how many enemies we have, and how many times they're already insulting us all the time. Always. Imagine you have a leader who has this type of thing in their past. They will never allow that to stand. They'll never let it go. There's type of mercy for the community and for that person, that individual. That, for example, his past is not going to be drug up, or what happened to his parents is not going to be drug up on him all the time, continuously. Islam doesn't want you to go near these types of things. And don't think that only this, as I mentioned, it only equates to actual fornication or adultery, these types of sins that we mentioned. We have hadith that, the looking with the lust is a type of minor zina. It's minor zina. Or for example, another one, self-pleasure, which is, according to the hadith, it's a type of zina. And we have several narrations about it. And the ayah which I recited, those people who guard their private parts, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he said, somebody asked him about this verse, and one of the things that he mentioned about that is self-pleasuring. He said they don't do that. They stay away from that. This is one of the things that this verse forbids. And we have a hadith, a strong hadith from Imam Sadiq it tells you the severity of that sin, of self-pleasuring, and where that can lead to. Imam Sadiq said, on the Day of Judgment, there are some groups of people that Allah doesn't even talk to them. He doesn't even talk to them. So one of those people, one of those groups is self-pleasuring. You know what the other group was that Imam Sadiq equated with those people? So those people commit homosexuality. It's the hadith, so he equated them together. I mean, both these sins are very serious. It's not something that should just be laughed at and think it's not a serious issue. It's very serious. It destroys, it leaves a dark mark on the soul. It helps destroy the soul. And then we have narrations that, for example, the enemies of Ahlul Bayt, those people who hate Ahlul Bayt, the people who killed Ahlul Bayt, they're all involved in these types of sins, or their birth was as a result of these types of sins. They came from this type of debauchery. Doesn't mean that, for example, anyone who comes from that is going to hate Ahlul Bayt. No. Doesn't mean that. What it means, what the hadiths are saying is that those people who have that type of severe animosity towards Ahlul Bayt, they have these traits along with it. Because the idea is that the darkness that came from these type of acts and brought them in is what led them to this type of level of depravity. And we see that. And when I mentioned what's the relation between that and Karbala, we see that with the killers of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. We take a look at the lineage of Abu Abdullah alayhi salam, the purity of that lineage, Imam Hussein, and we say, أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الإسلام الشامخة وللأرحام المطهرة لم تنجسك الجاهلية بإنجاسها. That, Ya Hussein, you are a light in the loin, a light in the wombs, and the Jahiliyyah never touched it with its najasa. I mean, nothing haram. Imagine when a child is born, when a child is conceived, when a person is conceived, everything that is in the parents comes into that child. If that person, for example, consuming haram things, then that's broken down by the body. It's used by the body's energy. It becomes part of that person. It becomes part of that child. What I'm saying, not only is not coming from these type of sins, he's coming from the purest line, coming from pure parents who have bred him and fed him and raised him on nothing but the halal. And then we take a look at the kills of Abu Abdullah alayhi salam. And those people who were involved in the murder of Imam Hussein, they're all stained by these types of horrible acts. Marwan ibn Hakam. Marwan ibn Hakam, if you look, when Imam Hussein alayhi salam was in the city of Medina, and they came to get the bay'ah from Imam Hussein, and they brought him, and they told him, Marwan and Walid ibn Utbah, they told him, give us the bay'ah. And when Marwan said, I'm going to take your head, what did Imam Hussein tell him? He said, Ibn Zarqa, you think you can take my head? He's referring to Marwan's grandmother, who was a known fornicatress, adulteress. Muawiyah. We have hadith that, if you remember, I mentioned the different types of nikah which took place during the time of Jahiliyyah, which was mentioned by Aisha, the different types of things that Islam forbid. Muawiyah was the result of the ijtima, the group. We have hadiths about that. And his mother Hind used to engage in that, and they weren't even sure if Abu Sufyan was his father. Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. His father was Ziyad ibn Abi. They don't even know who his father was. Muawiyah used to come and say, you say he's son of Abu Sufyan. And that they were so, far gone that he would come and openly say, yeah, just say my father was the one who committed adultery. It's okay. So he can be part with me. His son, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. Shimr. You know how Shimr was born? During the time of the second Khalifa. One time there was a woman who was out. They said that they had caught her fornicating. They brought her and she was going to be punished. So they're going to do the punishment for her. Imam Ali alayhi salam, he came. He said, stop. Allow me to first ask this woman what happened. She informs him. She says, I was out in the desert and I was stuck without water. I was worried I was going to die of thirst. I came across a well. And there was a man sitting on the well. And he wouldn't allow me to get any drink of water. He said, I have to submit to him. I refused. And then she said, I felt like I was going to die. My eyes started to roll in the back of my head. I didn't know what to do. I said, okay, please. He had a sword, and this is what happened. So honestly, this woman is free. But that man was Dil-Joshin. And this was Shimr's father. This is how Shimr was conceived. See, this is the result. That's the end result of these types of great sins. That they create dark human beings. And they're all involved in this type. Yazid himself. Yazid was involved in all types of debauchery. Everything you can imagine. We even have narrations, Na'udhu Billah, it said Yazid even fornicated with his own sister. So, as a word of advice for all people, stay away from this type of lust. Do your best. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help. For those who are unable to marry, then you should fast and seek help from Allah. I think my time is up, so I'm going to end here, inshallah. Sallallahu Muhammad wa alihi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Ajil farajan.
تشکر می‌کنیم از برادر عزیز و گرامی ما جناب آقای ثروت برای سلامتی خودشون و فامیل محترمشون صلوات بلند ختم کنیم. اللهم صل علی محمد و آل محمد. نوبت میرسد به برادر بزرگوار و عزیز ما جناب حاجی آقای باقرزاده، انشاءالله شما رو با سخنانشان مستفید می‌سازند. برای سلامتیشان